Well, we are joined by two-time national champion and Naismith Hall of Fame coach, current ACC Network analyst, Muffet McGraw. Thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you doing this, Muffet.
Hey, Sean, always a pleasure to talk to you.
You've got even better background than me. Like I thought I had good background stuff. I've seen yours on TV before. You've got like a you could have like a museum, I think, with the stuff that you've probably got
A
put up
lot of
in your
stuff
room there.
accrued over the years, and it's
Yeah.
it's only now after you retire you kind of look back and you go, "Wow, I got a lot of stuff here."
Yeah, that's right. A lot of cool stuff is built up in this room over time. Yes, a lot of cool stuff. Is there a replica trophy or anything like that in your room?
No, I have the shot with Enrique.
Okay.
I don't have the trophy.
Okay. You know, it's funny. We were speaking of the shot with Enrique. We were talking on the show earlier this week about some of the most iconic shots in basketball history. We were talking NBA, women's college basketball, men's college basketball, and we picked Enrique's shot as arguably the most iconic shot in women's basketball history. Can you think of any others that are even kind of in the conversation with that?
You'd have to go back to the 90s. North Carolina won the national championship on a shot. It's kind of similar. It was an out of bounds play. They made the shot,
Right.
and it was a close game throughout. And so that was it. But that's way back in the 90s. So definitely. And I'm so happy every time the tournament comes around, somebody's playing that shot. And
That's right.
See it again and again and again.
Well, it was funny because I know when Mississippi State came, I think you were there that day for the Mississippi State game, and they were talking before the game. The NCAA wanted to play that, and they did play it, I believe, the Enrique shot, and of course that beat Mississippi State in the championship. And some of the Notre Dame people were kind of a little leery, like they were maybe rubbing it in Mississippi State's nose or something by playing that. But I mean, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, it's only been 5 years.
I was in the arena, but I did not see that. I saw it say the last time they played, Notre Dame won the championship. And I thought if I was coaching, I probably wouldn't have said, "Don't put that on. We don't need any extra fuel for the balloon."
Exactly. Well, there's a lot of talk this week about the popularity of the women's game, and justifiably so. But when you think back, the ratings really started to grow for the national championship game the next year after that, and they've grown. I think this year they obviously the best ever with it peaked at 12.9 million or something like that, and the average of 9.5 million, right around there. What impact do you think that those two shots that Enrique had in that Final Four maybe have had on helping the popularity of the sport over the last 5 years?
I absolutely think that's when it got started. And I think people maybe were a little tired, I know around here, of seeing UConn every single year in the Final Four. And this year we had 3 brand new teams. And I'll tell you, Iowa owned that arena. They had so many people, at least half of the arena, and it was sold out, was Iowa fans. And they were so loud. And it was such a great atmosphere for the game. So I think when you turn it on, and you see the crowds and you hear the excitement, I think that really helps. So I think since, over the last couple of years, it's been growing. And this year on ABC, maybe that was something that helped us get a little bit more attention rather than on ESPN. So I think it's definitely growing. And it's time to move the women's tournament out of the rest of those, those other tournaments and put it on our own and see if we can make some money.
Yeah, and that's kind of the big conversation right now, that it's tied to some of the other sports, and that it might end up they might end up getting their own rights deal. And I would be really curious to see. I mean, it is you could see the explosion of it, again in the wake of that.
I heard Charlie Baker, our new NCAA president, talking about that, and he said, after what I've seen, I think it's definitely time to look and see what we can do, because we're not just in with a few other we're in with every other sport except for men's basketball and, of course, football. So all of those sports, they lump them together. They do the bottom line. They say, "Oh, you all lost money." But if you took us out of that, I think you may find, if you promote us, market us, and try to get some sponsorship for us, because the sponsors are tied in with the men. So it takes about $8 million, I think, to get a sponsorship. And if they would just break away and say, "No, we're going to let the women's sponsors be a separate issue," and then maybe we'd get more sponsors.
I think so. Well, we're talking right now. It's 4 days after the national championship game, which of course was Sunday afternoon, and there's been the Caitlyn Clark Angel Reese talk is kind of starting to die out at this point, but it's dominated conversation over these last few days. And again, when you look at that, like setting aside if you agree or disagree with whatever, just the fact that people are talking about women's basketball, I think that has to be good for the sport. What do you think?
Sean, I was thinking the exact same thing. At least they're talking about us. It doesn't matter. But, they're not talking about what Kim Mulkey was wearing. So I think that's a plus.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
They're talking about the game. And, trash talking's been around a long time. And we've had some pretty good trash talkers here.
Yeah.
And I have to think Marina Mabry might have been the best trash talker ever. But it used to be kind of subtle. And now it's really getting to the point where it's just so obvious. And I'm not sure I like trash talking from anyone. I didn't like when Caitlyn Clark was like, I can't hear you from the crowd. And, when, everybody's trying to get more attention. I never really liked that. But, little talking would be okay.
Sure.
But yeah, it's getting a lot of attention. And I think you're seeing that it's been happening a long time. And now they're just putting a little light on it.
When you look at Caitlyn Clark and all these 40-point games plus the assists and everything that she does, just from a playing standpoint, is there a comparison you can think of? Is there anyone you would compare her to?
I can't think of anyone. And people are trying to compare, and they keep going to the NBA because there's no player like her. She is so fun to watch. She comes over half court and she's ready to shoot it. So
I know.
I'm not sure I would coach her, because she gets a lot of shots, but she leads the nation in assists. It's not like she's the only one doing the scoring. So fun to watch. I'm really disappointed, honestly, that she's in the Big Ten because you're not going to see a lot of her games, you're not going to see her on ESPN much. And that's a shame. Now that I work for ESPN, as we know, that's a shame.
That's true. Speaking of media rights deals breaking off and everything else, it's going to be a little bit different. Well, the good thing, though, is she's going to be back. Good for the women's game. And like when you think about it, like Aaliyah Boston was back for South Carolina this year. Olivia Miles, Sonia Citron, they'll be back next year. Caitlyn Clark will be back next year. How good is that for the sport? Just that you get some continuity, like when you compare it to the men's game, especially where you've got one and done and all that kind of stuff.
I think it's great for the sport. And you know what, Sean, I think this NIL is what's keeping kids in school. I mean, Caitlyn Clark, I think, is making around $1 million. There's 2 kids from Miami making 1.7 million, kid from Connecticut making $1 million. So why should they go to the WNBA and make $70,000 when they can stay in school and make $1 million and kind of plan for the future? But I was just looking in the ACC. We've got our top 10 scorers back. And that is so exciting for the league. We're going to have such great games. Elizabeth Kitley from Virginia Tech, 2-time player of the year, just decided she's coming back for her 5th year. Georgia Amore, a great shooter. She really got a lot of attention. She's not quite Caitlyn Clark, but she is fun to watch too. And of course, our own Olivia Miles and Sonia Citron. I mean, those two, we're gonna have a great conference next year.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's Virginia Tech getting Kitley back is really a game changer. I think when you look at the early shape of the race for next year, when you're talking about the 2-time conference player of the year.
Yeah. They absolutely have to be number 1 coming in. But I think Georgia Amore could be player of the year on the same team, which is crazy.
But Notre Dame has a couple players that could be player of the year from the same team. And we've mentioned them already, Olivia and Sony. And, you tweeted after Notre Dame season ended with that loss to Maryland about how difficult it is for a shooting guard to suddenly have to, transition to now being the facilitator at point guard. And as good a job as KK Bransford and Citron did, it's different. How would you describe just how difficult making that kind of move mid-season especially is?
Well, it's really based so much on experience. I mean, point guards, they grow up with the ball in their hands. They're the floor general. They're looking around. They've got to see the mismatch. What kind of defense are they in? Are they playing a zone? Are they playing man? Who's going to be open? Who should I get the ball to? And how do they want the ball? Where do they want the ball? Can she catch it full speed and make a layup? Where is she going to travel? I got to know exactly where they want the ball. There's so many decisions you have to make before you even cross half court. You're trying to figure everything out. And then in your mind, you're thinking, now what play am I supposed to run? It's just so many things that you have to think about. It's such a mental game. You need a high IQ like Olivia has. So when you have to take that over, and remember, Marina did that for us in
Right.
2018,
Right.
but she had played some point guard through her career in
Okay.
AAU and all. And it was hard for her to give up that 3-point shooting. And we need Sony to score. I think everybody was like, put the ball in her hands and then let her shoot it. She now has to do everything and guard the other team's best player. And don't forget to rebound and make sure you don't come out of the game for a minute.
Exactly. We obviously don't know what Olivia's recovery and rehab and all that stuff is going to look like after her knee. They've got another great point guard coming in Hannah Hidalgo, but I'm curious, as a coach, you had a lot of great players come through there. Obviously, were you ever concerned, as great as they may be, about maybe having to rely on them too much when they are freshmen, or what did you think about that?
You do not want to have to rely on freshmen to win. That is for sure. They're going to get better throughout the year, but a lot of times they hit the wall. I mean, you look about here in Indiana, the girls are playing their championship in like the first week of February. So their season is so much shorter. So in the college game, they get into the end of February, they're exhausted because they're not used to playing that long. So I think you can have a freshman. We've had some really good ones here, but remember when Skylar came in, she didn't even start her freshman year. It took 5 or 6 games, and then she got into line. Ruth Riley didn't start till I think January. I mean, it takes them time. So you can't rely on the best situation is to have a veteran point guard with some other young players. And Olivia was the exception. I mean, she came in and was able to go right away.
Yeah. And I think she still benefited from having those few extra games when she came in mid-season as well. And she was just able to hit the ground running the next year.
Yeah, that gave her a great sense of how the college game is going to go and what practice is going to be like, what the academics are like. And you only had to do it for a semester, so she probably could stay a little fresher. But she's going to be terrific.
Does it? I don't want to put heap the expectations too high on Neil, but I know she's going to have them herself. And does it feel like with what she and her staff are putting together with these last few classes now that it's about to kind of ascend to another level again here pretty soon?
I have to say my biggest worry for the team is losing Ebo. That's a big loss. She really gave us some great minutes in big games. I mean, she really kind of won that Connecticut game down the stretch. There was a Louisville game at home. She won that one down the stretch. When we needed a basket, we could go into her. And I don't know who's going to take her place. That's going to be a huge concern. I think we're going to have great guards. We always seem to have great guards. But we do need to get some posts, and hopefully somebody in the transfer portal will show up for us. But I saw that our freshman Hannah, she was MVP of the All-Star game, which means absolutely nothing, as we know. But she can play.
She can. She is fast. I saw over 7.5 steals per game in high school. That's a pretty nice number to have.
We could use somebody that can guard. I think that would be good for us to get somebody.
I think so too. and another ball handler as well, just with that press and all those little things. But Muffet, this is 40 some years, I guess, since the NCAA began sponsoring the women's basketball championships. What do you think's changed most about the game in that time?
Well, I think right now we're seeing parity, and I think that's the best thing that could have happened. I mentioned earlier with Connecticut, they got the player of the year every year. The best player in the high school ranks went off to UConn, and sometimes they would have 4 national player of the years playing on their team. So they've always had so many All-Americans. And now kids are saying, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else. Aaliyah Boston goes to South Carolina. They win the championship. Haley Scott goes to Stanford. They win the championship. Caitlyn Clark goes to Iowa. They're that close. Angel Reese goes down to LSU. So I think you're starting to see the girls coming out of high school are saying, I don't have to go to UConn to get into the Final Four. I can go anywhere else. And maybe I want to start something where they've never won before. Maybe I want to take a new team to new heights. And I think that is something, and unfortunately now I think money is going to come into it as well. And that's going to be disappointing because people are being offered here's $50,000 for you to transfer, which we've never had in the women's game. And I think is going to ruin the game. Yeah,
that's unfortunately some of those factors are coming into the women's game now too. And you're absolutely right. There's so many things that are hard to regulate. I guess it's tough.
Yeah.
One thing I wasn't sure how I would feel when they decided to switch to quarters in the women's game. Quarters advance the ball. I'll say personally, I really like it, and I'm surprised the men don't do it. As a coach who coached both ways, what do you think about it?
I love quarters. I love it for so many reasons. One, there's one less timeout, which I thought we had way too many timeouts. Second, the end of the quarter is an exciting time. There's 30 seconds left. What are we going to do? So now you get to do that 3 and 4 times instead of just once at the half, and it wasn't as important. But I think that's key. The foul situation, now you shoot on the 5th. So it's really, you can start over in the second quarter, where before you could have been in the bonus with 10 minutes to go in the game or the half. I think it really helps. But advancing the ball, oh my God, that keeps you in. There's 3 seconds left.
I know.
Have a good shot to win the game. So
I know.
I don't know why the men aren't going for that. There's no other place, whether it's FIBA, European leagues, the NBA, the W. Nobody plays halves anymore. So the men are way behind.
Well, and there are sometimes it's like you're not. Me personally, anyway, I won't be thinking about it, and then all of a sudden, the coach will call a timeout, and it's like, why are you calling a timeout? Oh, that's right. You get to go to, you get to bring it to front court. Why wouldn't you call a timeout in this situation? So
it's a lot of strategy, and everybody tries to save their timeouts now for the end. And during the game in the pools, they just got to say nothing. Do I want to call a timeout? I don't want to. You want to be really frugal with those timeouts.
You mentioned the atmosphere at the Final Four down there, and you were down there. What's it like being a spectator / media member at the Final Four after being involved for so many years as a head coach at that event?
Well, I don't ever think I'm going to consider myself a media member, because I still.
You're still just Coach McGraw, right?
The Virginia Tech coach is in the press conference and somebody says, "Do you deserve to be here?" And I'm like, oh my gosh. So you have to learn how to handle those dumb questions from the media.
Yeah.
But as a member of the media, I'm enjoying it. I really am, because I got to see it firsthand and be there. And now I'm getting to see kind of like what the fans are going through and what all the buildup is about and all the stuff around the Final Four. We never did any of that. All business and just go in and practice and then play.
Well, the Final Four is always that, the coaches convention and other things going on beyond just the games. In that stretch between 2002 around 2010, before you started making the Final Four a regular thing once again, did you go down there as a coach? Did you do any of that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, I was the legislative chair for Division I for 10 years. So I ran the business meeting. We talked about new legislation. But they have clinics, they have on-court things, so you can learn a lot. But plus, you just get to socialize with some of your peers, some people that you never get to see in that situation. So it's fun to kind of go down and talk about basketball stuff and just talk about everything. So I always enjoyed going to the Final Four.
You've been with the ACC Network. This is what, you just finished year 3? Is that right?
I'm a veteran
Year 3.
now.
I know. It's like you don't consider yourself a media member, but you're right in there with them every day. What do you like most about doing that?
I love the people I'm working with. We go to ESPN once a week, Thursday night's ladies' night, and hope everybody's watching. And that's when we have all the games. And then we have an hour-long show, which is the only show in women's basketball. And we have an all-women crew. So it is so much fun working with them. Just being at ESPN and seeing how everything works. They really do a great job of focusing on the ACC. So I enjoy it. I enjoy sitting back and kind of watching the strategy and seeing what they should do. It's really hard to watch a lot of games at once, though. On Thursday night, there's 3 games at 6,
right.
There's 2 games at 7, there's 2 games at 8, and you're trying to watch everything. And I can only watch Notre Dame, so I'm always focused on the wrong TV. So that's the hard part, but I am enjoying it. And I get to honestly critique what I see. And, there's some coaches that I critique a little harder than others, but
I'm sure they appreciate it too, right?
Yeah.
You and that crew really seem to have a good chemistry. How important do you think that is?
We have Kelly Gramlich. She played at Clemson, claims that she played here in the first ACC game. And claimed that Enrique was guarding her. And at some point, I screamed at Enrique, "Are you going to guard her?" She had 3 or 4 threes, and she never lets me forget about that. Well, she's terrific. She knows the game. She does her homework. Kelsey Riggs does she's the host. She does the men's side. She does Sports Center. She does everything at ESPN. She's a professional. Love working with her. And we've had so many different people. We've had Chelsea Gray last year. She was fantastic.
Right.
This year we have Mulata and Lexi Brown. So, we always have some new people coming in, but the chemistry, really important. You know what that's like when you're working with somebody. And you have to work with Karen Robinson Keys. And I know she is just so dull and she never has a smile.
That's right. I told her a couple weeks ago, I said, yeah, my wife and I were going to the Springsteen concert in Cleveland. We did that last night, but she's like, well, we already went. We went and saw the first show in Tampa. And it's like, come on, Karen, can't you just let me have one thing?
She's phenomenal. I love listening to both of you guys.
She's a lot of fun. I appreciate you saying that. It is a lot of fun. Do you want to stay in the studio? Would you ever want to do games on TV? Are you just stay where you are right now?
I like being in the studio. I'm afraid to do games because I might just say what's going on that's wrong, and I might be too honest for people to handle. What a shot. What were you thinking? I don't know. I'm sure the coach wasn't planning on that. But I don't know. I think I could at some point, but right now I just really like being in the studio. I think it's a little more cerebral, and you don't have to think of what if they're winning by 40? What do you talk about? What do you guys talk about when we blow a team out? I kind of like my own.
More Phil. As much as you have to try to anticipate some of the blowouts sometimes and have more. Well, maybe like you could do maybe the ACC network. They could experiment a little bit. They could do like Bird and Taurasi did the alternate broadcast during the championship. Maybe it could be like McGraw, like Muffet and Enrique doing something like that.
That'd be something to see Enrique up there. She would definitely. Maybe Marina Marina and Enrique. The Enrique.
There you go.
Be good, but yeah, I could see myself doing a game at Notre Dame if somebody got into trouble and couldn't get in here. At least I feel like I knew what I was doing in this building.
That's right. Well, the one that would get the ratings on TV is the the Muffet and Gino show. But
that would be good.
I mean.
I always say when people have that DNR, if you're brain dead and you need somebody to pull the plug, I say Gino is going to be the guy that I pick because he's not going to be emotional about it. He's going to be, oh yeah, pull that plug. That's what she wants.
That's true. But I think you kind of fit into that as well, wouldn't you?
I might.
All right, Muffet McGraw again, the now of the ACC Network, even if she doesn't consider herself a media member, but that's okay. Two-time, of course, national championship head coach 2001 and 2018 and Naismith Hall of Famer. Appreciate you doing this, Muffet.
Always a pleasure, Sean. Thanks.
Great to talk to you as always. You too.